how is your ideal working partner similar and different from you?
Yeah, totally. I would say like my ideal working partner would be someone that maybe balances me out. I'm very much like a high level strategy, kind of like visionary, but also, I'm able to execute and get things done. But sometimes I push things forward with a little more attention to that high level than with like the small specific nitty gritty details. And so the differences, would be that this person, my ideal working partner, would be really, really amazing at those little and small details, and maybe even like are super great at providing like guidelines or like bumpers, for example, to like stay in between. And then other similarities would be like they're passionate about what they do. They have this like get the job done kind of like mentality. And I kind of think back to when I worked at a previous company, a couple companies ago, startup, and I worked with someone, and her name was Satya, and she actually guests on my podcast, which
Yeah,
is amazing.
I spoke with her as well. She's amazing
Oh,
as well.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But not on this podcast. But yeah, yeah.
love,
Go.
yeah, loved Satya.
Yeah,
We were both super collaborative. We both brought really great ideas, and we were able to kind of like narrow it down to like whatever we were trying to do. It was pretty easy to just like get there. And when it was time to take those ideas and put it into practice, like she was just really amazing at taking them and creating those like bumper lanes, and made it very easy for someone like me to like complete and finish the work. And I think anything that she and I have like worked in tandem on, whether it was at that previous company or even her new the company she's working at now. I did a presentation for them on like LinkedIn and personal branding, but
yeah.
yeah, it was just incredibly easy to work with her, and we were able to get things done, and it was like a positive experience across the board. Whereas, there have been other times where I've worked with individuals, and it might not have been like the easiest working situation.
What are some red flag beliefs for you and other people? So the example I gave you is for me. I think a very dangerous belief to have is that if I win, then you lose, and if you lose, then I win. Um, and I kind of like the idea that there's no kind of win-win mentality. And if you're like in a relationship with a person like this, then it's a recipe for disaster because by definition it's a conflict. And as I, the funny thing is, just the day I wrote this, later at night, I came across uh, a quote by Mark Cuban, which is, "Look for the fool in the deal. If you can't find the fool, then you're the fool," which is like demonstrate exactly what I'm thinking about. If you have this belief system in you that there has to be a loser, then it's a very dangerous belief. And so do you have yourself like look for certain beliefs? If people have them, then you are wary of them.
Yeah, I think the first one that came to mind, personally as well as professionally, is like people who think that since something has always been done one way, that it should always be done that same way. There's always room for innovation. There's always room for efficiency. There are many ways to complete a task. And I think that's for me one of the most frustrating things that I've come across is, no, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. This is how it goes. This is kind of, you follow this. This is what you just do. And there are so many other perspectives in this world. There are so many other ways to do something. And I get like, oh, maybe if something has worked over and over and over again, then like, if it's not the saying, don't, if it's not broken, don't fix it type of thing. But like, there are ways to find efficiencies. There are ways to do something differently. There are ways to, if it's business, stand out and actually drive and do like great marketing. If it's personal life, I don't have an example off the top of my head. And I think Grace Hopper. She is one of the leading minds to like computer programming. Without her, we probably wouldn't have come this far. And her quote is like the most dangerous phrase in the human language is it's always been done this way, or something along those lines. And it's something that I stand by. Actually, believe it or not, if I apply to a job, and I'm like using a resume to do that, I have that in my resume. In my little first sentence is my second favorite quote is that by Grace Hopper. So people know that this is like the mentality that I'm bringing, and I've had that for years. And I think to find out if somebody has that like mentality is maybe just getting great at asking questions, and kind of asking about like who they are or what they're doing or how they're doing things, or maybe like asking them to tell me about the last risk they took, or even, what are some of the things that, you've done to maybe break the mold or try something new. And then kind of based on their answers, go from there. If they're giving you some really great things that they have tried, perfect. If they're talking about, oh, we actually have, pre-built processes that we follow that have tended to work, maybe those are some red flags.
Tell me about a stranger that you remember.
Yeah. Saw this question, thought about it a bit, had a couple people that have come to mind. And I think the person that stood out to me out of those was a guy named Glenn. So a few years ago, I was just having a really, really just bad day. Couldn't be home, just needed to get out of my own head, and had a lot of like personal things come up. And so I went down the street to a coffee shop just to kind of like sit in public and kind of have the sounds of outside kind of, help me process my thoughts. And I remember being in this coffee shop, and this homeless guy walks into the coffee shop and sits in the corner, and he's talking to himself. He's like sitting there just talking to himself. And the entire coffee shop, I'm noticing, I'm kind of just like people watching, are like staring at this guy, and just the looks on their face were like judging looks, or they're like, oh gosh, like who's this person walking in, or oh, who is this like homeless person, or XYZ. And that didn't feel right to me. And so I was just kind of like observing, and I saw him, walk outside with the shopping. I walked outside to like his shopping cart, which is like all he had. And he pulls out like a box of cereal, came back into the coffee shop and started eating his cereal, just dry cereal. And didn't love that people were looking and judging. So I was like, you know what, like I ended up just getting up and walking over to him and introducing myself. And I was like, hey, can I buy you anything? Like I can get you something from here. The store's next door. He said, no. He's like, no, I'm fine. Thank you though. I pushed back. I was like, I'm totally fine. Like, I would love to get you something. I mean, you're eating cereal, like save it. I'll get you something else. And he didn't want anything. He said, no, I'm good. And we ended up talking for a bit. And that really left an impact in me, and kind of like showing the kind of remind me to show the appreciation for what I have and who I was. Is almost like serendipitous that, on that day, kind of that situation happened. And a few days later, I go back to the coffee shop. It's just right down the road from me. And Glenn was there again. He was there, and he remembered me. He remembered my name, and we talked for a bit longer. And I think he was just jazzed to have somebody to talk to. And he had some like the way he acted was almost like, I'm not an expert in like mental health, but like the way he acted was more like we saw a car drive by, and he's like, oh, look, that's a car, vroom. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, Glenn, let me buy you something. Like, I didn't say this. I said, Glenn, I'm going to buy you something. So I go to the store and I go to buy, and I bought like a couple of groceries for him, just like, so he has, came back to the coffee shop to surprise him, and he wasn't there, and he was gone, and hadn't ran into him since. Haven't seen him since then. And that just whole experience left a huge impact on me of like, you can find light in any place if you're looking for it, and just kind of like remembering what I have, who I am, and being appreciative for that as well.